Welcome back to Morning Express. We are coming to you live from the Panari Hotel, and it's Thursday, so it's Kenya Thursday. We are always focusing on conversations around our nation. Then today we are talking more about my job, what I do. So it should be an interesting discussion. The media, our role in achieving and attaining that to Kenya. But our topic today, journalism and patriotism, because we've been accused of not being patriotic. You heard what the Inspector General had to say in touching on some of our coverage of a Westgate, and also the President 2 days in a row having some very, having words of caution for the media and asking the media to be responsible. I want you to engage with us, be part of our conversation. And on Westgate, we're asking you, do you think the media was irresponsible in their coverage of the Westgate attack? Do you think the media was irresponsible in their coverage of Westgate attack? As we saw, it was a 4-day, everything on TV, on radio mostly was Westgate. It's a story that grabbed the attention not only of the country but of the world as well. And we saw it play out 24 hours in a media station. Remember, at KTN, we're covering it throughout the night, throughout the day. So as you watched that, did you get a sense that the media was irresponsible? Let us know what your thoughts are. And also just on how those lines can be drawn. How do you get to the point where you draw the line between unearthing the truth and getting all that information out there for the public, and also being a patriotic Kenyan and patriotic journalist, if I may, at the same time? Joining me right now on set to have breakfast with us is David Ohito, Deputy Chair, the Editors Guild, as well as the Standard Group Digital Editor. I don't know who you're tweeting at this hour. And also Lorna Irungu, who's our communications consultant. Thank you, Lorna. Thank you, David. We're also expecting Clay Muganda. Hopefully he'll beat that traffic jam in a short while and be part of our discussion. And of course, we'll get to engage. But I want to start with just a quick one, 1 minute each. The state of the media, where are we at 50 years on? What would you say if you're asked, what is the state of the media in Kenya? Lorna.
Thank you for this. And I do have a communications background, and I did study media and journalism.
Right.
I'm just not a practicing journalist. And I think 50 years on, how we would define the state of the media in Kenya, personally, from where I'm sitting, is with the challenges of technology. So with the internet and social media and coming the growth of technology,
right,
the media's role has become a little bit mishmashed. Whereas before, you were the prime source of information and access to that information. You were generally the voice, the face, the reflection of the people. 50 years on, there's almost a catch-up. The role of the media is quickly evolving. There's a lot of changes happening. Digital is really big. Mm-hmm. And whereas before you waited to read the paper, to hear that big story, to listen to that big expose, half the time now you've had it, or you've heard of it, or you've heard rumors about it, and the word is spreading a lot faster. And given, if you look back 20, even just 20 years in Kenya, what the role of the media was in what they call the second liberation, in fighting for freedoms, in ensuring that we have this democratic space, it was critical. It was key. It was a focal point. Journalists were under attack at that time. I mean, physically, their lives were in danger. People were underground talking about these things, and Kenyans and all those kind of things during those times. So the media has always played a very critical role in enhancing democracy, in sharing the truth, in putting governments in check, and in working as the eyes and the ears for us citizens who maybe don't have privy or access to that information.
Right.
But that role is slowly evolving.
Okay, the state of the media, Ohito.
I would want to begin by saying that Kenya enjoys one of the most robust media scenarios across Africa and in the world. Kenya has produced some of the best journalists fitting the bills in CNN, BBC, and all world-class media levels. Our names are there, our staffers are there, and we have done a good job all through. But at the moment, I want to say that as we enjoy the robust environment, it's also very competitive, but there are threats which remain alive. And you saw as late as last week when some of our members were summoned, particularly the two journalists, John Alan Namu and Moha from KTN, including our CEO, Sam Sholei. These continue to tell you that the threats against media freedom are very live. We should not forget that in 2006, the Standard Group was raided and its equipment carted away by state functionaries. I was only surprised to read that after all that time, the group was compensated by a paltry 5 million shillings. So that is how I would want to describe the media in Kenya today. Very robust, employing quite a number of people, very competitive on TV, catching up very fast with digital. And I'm proud to say that the Standard Group will still have the best digital platform in East and Central Africa. We have the highest number on Facebook. We have the highest numbers on Twitter. And as Lorna said, yes, a few challenges of technology, but we are moving in there.
All right, I want us to start to now get into the coverage, because that is where the people get to see the work and get to judge the industry. And we'll begin with Westgate. And 2 days in a row, we had the president categorically speak and address the media in terms of caution as far as their coverage, and talking about the word I remember he last used was to practice responsibility. So I'll ask you, you watched it unfold. I'm sure everybody was watching for those 4 days. Unfortunately, that attack was unfolding. Was the media responsible?
I'm on the fence on this one, and I'm on the fence during the period. I think it was a scenario that no one was adequately ready for. What I saw was a lot of competition, a lot of, and he just mentioned there's a lot of competition in this space. You have about 5-6 broadcasting houses, everyone wanting to be the first on the scene. I had very serious concerns about when the case, especially the first 12 hours, when you had people calling and saying, asking people who didn't know, who were trapped in the mall, asking what's happening or trying to get information. And you had journalists and you had media people asking, where are you? And looking at the situation and thinking, well, if you're in danger, then the people who are after you could know where you are. So for me, there were those issues of don't ask people where they are. One, don't ask people to identify themselves. The first responders were plainclothes, were civilians, some of whom did not want to be recognized, some of whom this is their own private thing. So by ensuring that there were cameras in people's faces consistently, I thought that was pushing the envelope to the point. I know there's an issue of being the first one telling the story, but at some point you're like, you're not sure what the situation is. And when it came out that this was a terrorist attack, the sophistication of terrorist attack has evolved. And that's where I was I was like, there needs to be some caution here. And some people did start pulling back. As the story evolved, you could see when people were like, okay, we need to stop doing this. People started being asked, stay safe, do this. But in the initial stages, there was a bit of, let's be the ones to beat the story.
For you was at that time those questions of where are you?
It was,
but in
where
terms
are
of
you?
the information
Yeah.
that was being put out by the media, what was being reported about the situation? Initially, it looked like a robbery. No one was sure it was a
Yes.
terrorist attack.
Yes.
You're trying to
Yes.
get information from the officials. So what the media was reporting?
I think at some point when they started evolving and they started figuring out that they're not getting the information they got, then we started tuning in more to them.
Okay.
Because at some point there was confusion. And then I think the media were caught in a catch-22 where you have to report the press statement of the official word. But on the other hand, you have people on the ground and you have been reporting stuff consistently. You're trying to get an official word to either support or refute what we are seeing on the coverage. So in terms of that, I think there was a fine balance to be played, because at some point the state officials come and they see something and you're like, but wait a minute, if we've been watching this, something doesn't seem to add up.
Yeah.
So in that point, I think there was a lot of balance. Post the whole 4 days,
Yeah.
post what happened, unveiling the truth behind the scenes. I think the media has done an excellent job on that, because the information has been there.
Okay.
I have a problem if you call me unpatriotic or you say something when I have no facts about it. But when there's actual evidence, when you're saying, I'm not accusing, I'm asking, what was going on if this is a situation we have?
Right.
And I think in terms of that, what the media has managed to do that was ask questions. There was a hashtag that started when we are one, and we're talking about supporting one another. 5-6 days post Westgate, we are wondering, because nothing was adding up. And nothing was adding up because what I said earlier and what he was talking about, it's a robust space. So there was information out there. So you're looking at it, you're like, wait a minute, this one tweeted this picture, this one said this, then this one reported this.
So to a large extent, you believe the media was not irresponsible?
No, not irresponsible.
Of course, you're in support of them. Okay, Ohito, let's see.
Yes.
Maybe not.
There have been cases which have been flagged out. I'll start with the negative.
Right.
Which included showing bloodied pictures.
Yes.
One of the newspapers. I'm told, sadly, that lady lost her life moments later. That can cause a lot of trauma for families. That was also what was flagged out, and I must say, even KTN, we didn't do a very good job when we showed what would glorify terror, somebody aiming a gun at the head of that gentleman lying next to the jumbo, shooting him, and then we see the guy dying. I think maybe because of pressure of time, I would want to defend fellow editors that they didn't do a good job on that. But that also helped to illustrate how dangerous these people were. That extent, the media were fairly accused. The converse is that up to now, the government does not have an official position on what happened on Westgate terror. How the hell do you expect the media to tell the world the truth? Up to now, more than 1 month after the terror attack, no single private media house has been allowed into the Westgate premises. Why? Why is the government trying to guard the media from going inside and telling the true story? So how else would you expect the media to have been fairly responsible, accurate, fair, and balanced in its coverage? If you look at the statements from President Uhuru, Deputy President Kimayo, Karangi, Olelenku, Omamo, there are over 15 versions of the Westgate terror. We don't know which one is the official one. If there's anything you believe government does not know to do, it is public communication in terms of a crisis time. And I think the likes of Manoa Esipisu, the likes of Munyori Buku sitting at State House must go and reconvene themselves and find how best they can communicate to Kenyans on issues of national importance.
But
we still
take
had
it back to the media.
Yes.
Because I don't want to focus on they have their own house to put together.
Yes.
But as far as the media and coverage, you've pointed out 2 incidences that you felt there were loopholes, something would have been done better.
Sure.
But also after that coverage, and the coverage you saw after those 4 days,
Sure.
what are your thoughts?
Media did above average. We scored 80%. With limited contacts even with terror sources, which our international media houses always have. The BBCs, Reuters, Al Jazeera have even contacts within those, the terror cells, and they can communicate and get info. We didn't have that aid, and we went ahead and did a good job. And I want to remind you that at one time, Al Jazeera and BBC were feeding on KTN footage. How else would you want us not to be responsible or to be responsible?
But also,
Yes.
the media was accused of this, and some people were saying, I'm now just watching Sky News, Al Jazeera. Why? Because I'm not getting the information from the local media.
Yes.
What the local media is saying is just churning out the same things we've been hearing all day. But the international media, they said, those who are the critics, that they were going further and deeper and questioning. And even like the stories, some of them even being run locally, were quoting international media.
Yes.
What do you have to say on that one?
I must again say yes. Terror is a new area of journalism. It's a new area of reportage for the Kenyan journalists. We are not like our Al Jazeera counterparts who are forever in terror places in Pakistan, Afghanistan, and so on. So you didn't expect us to measure at that level of a reportage on terror attacks. And 2, even war front, we have war journalists. We have not specialized as our international counterparts because our audiences are different. Kenya has not been to war. How well would you expect us to have that experience in coverage of war when we have not gone this as a country? So in a nutshell, even when people start talking about the power of the AK-47 rifle, I think 95% of journalists don't know. They don't know that one bullet against a running 7-tonner lorry can stop it. You know, that is the kind of knowledge that journalists in Kenya need to start understanding now. So it was a very gray area, very difficult to cover, and also very confusing even for senior editors who have been in the newsroom for over 2 decades.
Okay. Lorna, quickly on that.
Yes, I think my feedback on that is that Kenya has had terror attacks. I was at KTN during the 1998 bombings. And at that point, now that was totally new territory at that time. But moving on, if you look at it, and I think it was your competitor Nation who did a rundown of how many of these attacks we've had, not at that scale, but how many little grenade attacks and this had we had. There are 100, there were over 100, probably over 40 of them, but I counted about 300 people dead over a period of a year. Granted, it was 5 here, 6 here, 10 in Isli, something like that. But my thing was, and just picking up on what she said, all those international BBC had people on the ground. So they were not getting their information sitting in the international newsrooms in London. And it's about what you're saying. At some point, yes, Al Jazeera and some of those people were picking up on your feeds. But don't you feel that in this era we're living in, if we have a specialized police squad and people who are doing this, don't you think at that point, before you send someone on the ground or before we start getting information, or even for the editors, it is about leveraging contacts, it is about using news space, it is about sharing information? Because I know a couple of international fixers who were on the ground, who had access to information, of which I'm asking, how are you getting this information? You're not even Kenyan. But our people seemed to be missing that. And it goes to some of the things that you're saying. I spent 10, 20 minutes the eve of Sunday trying to ask people to pull that picture of that lady off. The one that was on the headlines, because and the argument was it's the angle of the story, or this is what we're trying to say. But my argument was, no, what is the mood of the country? What do we need to know? We unfortunately look to the media to be our answers for a lot of things.
Yeah.
And I'm actually relieved to hear that you can accept and say we were ill prepared for this. And I'm hoping that by saying that there's because we never hear people say that we were not.
Yeah.
In Kenya, we don't actually say we didn't know what was happening. We were caught. This was above our depth. And I hope that, and my question to you is, now that we've seen this is a situation, now that we kind of know, we are in Somalia, we know what's happening in the region, you just said it, we enjoy some of the best freedoms, not just on the continent, but in the world. What are you doing as the organization to ensure that we have credible reporters, that you have what I guess you'd call special assignment editors, that in times of something like this, something similar, not just in Kenya, but I can assure you something happens in Uganda, Tanzania, you're the regional hub. We will be looking, people across the region will be looking at Kenya to be the source of this reporting. So is this something that you're looking into now that we know posted? Because I'm glad to hear that you felt that you've accepted it was about that, because we did feel that.
Yes, it's something we are looking at, and we are holding a lot of discussions at different levels. We are talking to media scholars, and we've even told a number of public and private universities that whatever you are teaching now as journalism is for the 1980s and 1990s. I don't think you are preparing those who are leaving these colleges to come to newsrooms and go and deliver. And if you look at the average age of the newsroom today, I mean, you have 23, 22, 20-year-olds going to the scene. I've seen this disaster coverage becoming very challenging, and we need also to be emotionally prepared. These are things that newsrooms must start living alive to.
Yes, I want us to move on from that, because also one thing I'd credit KTN for, it has one of the strongest investigative desks in the country. That is granted. A focused desk, which we've seen this particular year. We're talking with Mohad the other day, churn out about 6 different stories just to build on that. So of course there's growth. There's a place to go going forward. There's preparedness and making sure we're all ready. But I want us to take us back to the issue of the CCTV footage. And the government, of course, thought they're the only ones who had that footage. And then slowly, you know, a little bit of this coming out. And would you say, because it really irked the security agencies, and also the issue of looting, because then seeing those paper bags, that was just the biggest story that particular day, the KDF coming out with that. Did the media behave badly by going out and getting this CCTV footage and showing it when the government thought they were the only ones in custody of it?
My answer?
Yeah.
No. I'm sorry.
Because they were made out to look like they did.
Okay, I understand. I mean, I'm still puzzled. I'm still puzzled about the argument of they're not patriotic. Because what is patriotism?
Yeah.
Patriotism is loyalty. It's you pledge your loyalty, you affiliate, you're proud, you want to do the best for your country. So then for me, it asks me, what is the character of the country that we want to be loyal to? Is it A, that we have got integrity, that we abide to the words of our national anthem, which talks about, as you know, standing up for what is good and what is honest and what is true? Is that it? Because we need to first define what character Kenya wants to be known for. Do we want to be known for being liars? Do we want to be known for, you know, kind of going back into this era that we fought so hard and a lot of people sacrificed to come out of, the democracies and the space he's saying? A lot of people fought for that. Don't we have a constitution? So for me, it's it's a fine line. In fact, I'm more surprised that that is a story that they're worried about and not the Expendables, which for me, I was like, okay, this is pushing the envelope.
Yeah.
So no, the
media did not behave
pictures started leaking on social media.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah.
people had access to that CCTV footage. I remember someone who tweeted and saying, knowing what I know, something is not right. Given 2 days of it. So in terms of that, no, because the CCTV footage, they never, I had to watch that show twice, but at no point did they say, you did wrong. What they asked were questions that said, why was this happening?
Yeah. And why did we see the parliamentary group saying, I want to say never looted?
Yes, but I'm like,
it was very categorical.
and it's the thing he was talking about of communication.
Yeah.
What is the official word? We've had very different things. So for me, it was that we had questions. We knew. We were following. There were people saying this is not adding up. And then you're like, okay, so now you're going to accuse the people who, and they've not said you stole. All they've said is, this is what we have.
Okay.
You choose for yourself.
Yeah.
So for me, their reaction shows either guilt or a cover-up. And I'm sorry, it's what he has just said. What you cannot use the 80s and 90s methodology to tackle a 21st century problem.
All right, exactly. I want to introduce our third guest. He's finally made it. Thank you for being with us, Clay Muganda, a writer. We appreciate you being part of us this morning. And we're just discussing when the CCTV footage got out, started airing on different media houses. That seemed to have been one of the things that really acted and got the government thinking, these guys are behaving badly. They initially thought they had the footage all to themselves, but as it got out, is when we started hearing conversations about media being more patriotic and being more responsible. I will ask you, when you're talking about patriotism, is it unpatriotic for a journalist to go to extents to unearth the truth?
Actually, I'm sorry for coming in late. I think when the story came out, I think the person who came out as being unpatriotic was the police, the Inspector General of Police, because I found that to be very unpatriotic of him. Yeah, because all through when this thing was going on, they kept on giving different, everybody was talking, they were talking at cross purposes, all the government agencies. And then suddenly you come out and accuse the journalists. And even if the journalists did not unearth that, the owners of the shops they had actually talked about it, that they went back and they found that the shops had been looted. So you were actually accusing the shopkeepers or the business owners of not telling the truth. I found that to be quite unpatriotic on his part. On his part. Yeah.
I also want, because I want us to move on to the elections. We've talked a bit quite about Westgate. You want to make a comment on the same?
Yeah, patriotism. Yes. I agree with Lorna. Unless the country has well-defined national values, that this is how a leader should behave. These are the standards Kenya wants. This is where we want to go as a country, not as select 10% of Kenyans or elite leaders only, that it's all Kenyans. Then stop talking about patriotism. When one leader leaves the country with a jet using taxpayers' money, you expect him to be more patriotic than the rest of us Kenyans? 41 millions? It's a big joke. To expect the media to have sat silent on that footage that damned the police and Kenya Army actions, it's one of the most serious issues I think we'll have forever. And I think the media did well. I expect that there'll be more footage which will unveil more, and we shall use them
in coming
much
days.
better.
On a scale of 1 to 10, Clay, before we move on to the elections, I want us to talk about 2007 and 2013 elections. Your take on the coverage of Westgate during the 4 days as it unfolded and after?
I think during the 4 days, or maybe the first 2 days, I would think the coverage was not very, very good. But afterwards, I don't know whether the media was trying to redeem itself. I say that the first 2 days it was not very good, or the first 3 days it was not very good, because we tended to take the word that we were given. We never asked the hard questions. Somebody comes up and tells us we have 15, we killed 2, we have 14 remaining, and we were not asking come on, your math is not adding up. So we took to the social media or the new media instead, and that's where we started calling everybody all the names. But when they sat in front there nobody was asking like, okay, fine, why is the chief of general staff accompanying the cabinet secretary? The cabinet secretary should be accompanied by his counterpart from defense. So nobody was asking all those things, but we were just asking them on social media. But I think later, after the 4 days, later after everything ended and the place was bombed out and bombed up, or bombed up or whatever it was that was done to it, is when the media now actually kind of started becoming very active in following up. And this was basically because after the shopkeepers came out and said like, oh, our shops were looted. So the media actually took action now, started following it up. But initially we were not asking the hard questions. And I think at the beginning, apart from murdering the English language.
And there is that. There's a lot of tweets on that as well.
Yeah. Apart from murdering the English language, it's because we also don't want to have what you call dead air. I think we did not have much to give to the people. So we go there, two journalists from the same media house. You went there 5 minutes before me. You're not an expert on such situations. Then I come back and I start interviewing you because we are there live and we don't want to have dead air, you see. So that time, I think probably those were some of the lapses.
Some of the lapses.
Yeah, I know we've had this discussion before with Mr. Ohito here, where he'll say like, this was the first time this thing happened, so you'd expect such kind of lapses. But I keep on asking myself, 1998 bombing, there are people who covered it. Those people are still in the newsroom.
Absolutely.
Why can they help these people? Why can't they help these new journalists or these new reporters? Because the same thing, we've had these arguments also when it comes to the elections, where Mr. Ohito actually tells you, I've been in the newsroom for 20 years plus. But when you ask about the last elections, he tells you, this was the first time we're doing this. Why don't we give the new journalists that guidance?
Mentorship.
Yeah.
The mentorship. So in your opinion, in terms of just that, which is also very important, because at the end of the day, as you're saying, everyone wants to be live and they want to have all these reporters talking about what is happening. In terms of the content and what you're saying actually, what information you're relaying, how important that is in terms of, are you actually saying anything? Ohito? Are we mentoring the new people
it's
like
a big
us
challenge.
who are not in this industry for a long time?
Kenya's biggest challenge with media houses has been so much traffic in and out. The guys who covered 1998 bomb blast, I think they can hardly count them in the newsrooms today. Those who are there have gone up the ladder. So they're either managers, and unlike the international media houses who would remove the most experienced ones to go to the scene, they sit back and send the amateurs and the new guys on the block, and the new kids on the block to go to the scene. So these guys, in fact, one station was even saying, Kenya has never had such a terror attack before. And then guys are saying, are you sure of what you're talking about?
Yeah.
And that is barely a reporter who has spent 1 year or 2 years in the newsroom. So they don't have that experience, knowledge about things that happen to this country.
Okay,
so
I want us
it's
to move
really
to the elections because
yes.
of our time. We've spent about half an hour on this. Let's talk about the 2007 elections against this year's elections. And Michelle Arong, my boss, actually penned down an article, Joe Ageo, on those two elections and the media and its role and how it played out that role. And Michelle Arong said that Kenya media was so terrified of what happened in 07 or 08 that it literally did everything to ensure the 2013 elections was peaceful, no matter how fair or otherwise the results turned out to be. And that according to her, the media's behavior in that instance spoke of a society terrified by its own capacity of violence. So if you are to compare and contrast 07 and this election and the coverage, what you saw then and what you saw now against what this was?
I'm going to say I think it was an extremely cautious approach.
Extremely
cautious. I think given what had happened in 07, what I felt personally was that there was a need to really push the peace agenda. Like, we're going to get through this. We're going to be peaceful. We're going to survive this. We're not going to go back to the point where there were real concerns. They were shut down, totally shut down. And for me, the absence of violence does not mean there was peace. and there is peace, because then are we saying that it's all over and done and people have kind of forgotten about it? And there were undertones, there were consistent undertones, but as a society, and it goes back to what we were talking about, what is our value? What is it? Because in one hand, as much as I can say the media did this or the government did this or people did this, it's a reflection of us as a group, as a collective. And that is my concern. My greatest concern right now is that even though we will shoot the messenger is actually a reflection of what we are saying or what we have. So what are we saying as a society? Part of the reason why you had to be cautious is because we have not actually dealt with the issues. Not talking about it does not mean you have dealt with it. Yeah. This accept and move on kind of thing we've silently all adopted is not a solution. And I felt that the fear, and Michaela was right on that, is that we were so afraid that it became, I will err more 110 on the side of caution. I will, if this person seems to be doing something shady, I'm not going to expose it right now because it could. And in that situation, I think what happened is, for majority of the public, we were just left with filling the gaps.
And Claire, I'll come to you. In terms of inflaming passions, I mean, that was the biggest concern, that every little thing you show could get people, to the wrong side and just losing the cycle of the election and saying, you know what, this will just go down. I remember when we were, during the nominations, we were in Kisumu with John Allen, we were covering that. And at some point, there was some burning of tires in Siaya. And I remember getting calls and tweets, people saying, why are you showing those pictures? Why are you showing the violence that's erupting? People don't need to see that right now. So at what point do you draw that line that, okay, we are now inflaming passions and we are informing people of really what is happening?
I think probably the ramifications of that caution during the 2013 elections will probably be felt later, because I remember some 2 or 3 months ago, I wrote an article and I wrote that Kenya is actually sitting on a ticking time bomb. And people called me, told me like, oh, you can't say that, people are fighting in DRC. I don't live in DRC, I live here, so I can only talk about this place. But then every day I see there's Turkana, there is, yesterday there was it in Samburu?
Yes.
I mean, every day. So this, I think the fact that we did not talk about it does not mean that we solved it. There's so many issues that actually we covered. We were being cautious, but this thing will blow on our faces maybe 2 or 3 years later, because there were very many underlying issues that were never covered. So it's better. I think we could have shown the things, tell people like, this is the reality on the ground, instead of covering it like, oh, we might fight. Let people know. I mean, what we were actually working on the ideology that what you don't know won't hurt you.
Yeah.
But I think it is wrong. I think that was wrong. I think we should have probably maybe covered 90% and maybe swept under the carpet probably 10%, instead of sweeping under the carpet 90% and showing only 10%.
Yes. And you had, during inauguration, President Kenyatta said, lauded the media, Museveni, for being responsible. So when we are getting those kind of messages from the government, is it because of that caution that perhaps went a step too far, that we didn't question, and now we are seeing it unfold with the IEBC, that we did not ask enough questions, wanted just everything to be fine, and anything that's not fine, you don't want to talk about it a bit too much, you want to just make sure we are peaceful, we have a good election?
I want to say that the IEBC was one of the biggest spenders. Kenya's election spending on media was close to 89 billion shillings. I mean, billions of shillings. So, and every media house fighting for its share. So, the only thing you'd express is that
compromised.
You can go on Sunline, yes.
Yeah.
In short, that is what it means. But look at the delicate situation that media lives in. When we publish, we are damned. When we don't publish, we are damned. One of us is at ICC, and every other time people are talking about ICC, nobody talks about Joshua Sang. And none of us was prepared to be in Sang's shoes come another time. So it's a very delicate situation. When people have failed, institutions have failed, they beam on the media and lay blame. Yet, I want to remind Kenyans and everybody watching that media is still the most trusted institution, more trusted than mosques and churches, more trusted than temples, most trusted than the State House, more trusted than judiciary. So what exactly do
Because
people
we're measuring
want?
ourselves against the worst.
worst. Yeah, I was going to
Yeah.
say that. I'm not sure.
We are the best.
I mean, it's like
Oh, we
like
are
among
the best.
blind, the one-eyed is the king. You know,
Wow.
We are the best in the country. So the job we have done, trying, if we take people through some of the footage we didn't show, and then I think they'll start appreciating that the media did an excellent job. What we didn't show in Baragoi, what we didn't show on the election, when we were sent away from the tallying center at Bomas of Kenya.
When we were only receiving figures, we were feeding off IEBC's figures. Why not
Exactly.
have our own
Sincerely.
independent?
So are you happy with the results now?
Yes.
Are you happy with what? I mean, you guys are saying like are we happy with what we were being fed? And right now we could not ask questions then. Right now you just mentioned that IEBC. We still don't know the extent of how much money they lost. We still don't know.
I would answer you by saying there are so many media houses, that international media houses, who camped in Kenya not to cover the elections but the bloodbath.
No, that
But
is
I'm
what we
proud
thought.
to say that
is what
none
we
of
thought.
them.
That
have
is what
that
we thought,
story.
and I'll give
That
an
is what we
example
thought,
of
yeah.
what happened
Yeah.
with the CNN report that came of this militia
Yes.
preparing to cause violence. And you saw the Twitter, this hashtag that trended after that. Someone told CNN that some have said we were so keen to ensure there's even no such thing happening and there's all peace everywhere. And perhaps what if it was true? What if in actual fact there were those people? But the fact that everybody was on the drive that we have to have a peaceful election, we have to make this work. So was it the media that was guiding and leading this agenda? Was it the people wanted it and the media succumbed and agreed to let's go with the flow of good things?
Let's go back to one of the questions you asked right at the beginning. What has been the role of media in the past 50 years? And I think there's always been media that has told the line and told the story. And there's always been media, individuals, few institutions who have been like, you know what? Our integrity, our values, what we stand for, we're going to pursue it by any means necessary, with sometimes dire consequences. So when you look at it at that angle,
Right.
I think for me, what we were lacking as a public is more voices that were hardline, that we've now stopped looking at those voices or looking for those voices in
Right.
terms of mainstream and have moved on to social media where people ask the hard questions. And when it starts going to that level, then there is a problem. And maybe there isn't. Maybe it's just the evolution of things. Maybe it's a way for a new crop of citizen journalism to crop up
Yeah, sure.
and people to start doing it. However, you don't know whether these people have an agenda. Although, as someone said the other day, there's so much money spent in media houses, the ownership and kind of like the people, you're not sure whether you're actually getting real truth, paid for truth, or an opinion. And that is, unfortunately, the scenario that the media is dealing with. On the issue that you were saying, the role, the minute you decide as an individual, I am going to be in the media, you have two things you do. You have your personal responsibility and credibility. Because, Sophia, if you ever report a story that turned out to be false because you were towing a party line,
should be
you
fired.
as an individual also carry that burden
Sure.
for the rest of your life, because it will be Sophia's story. Sophia is the one who said this, regardless of whether it was your editorial stuff or things like that. For me, where I'm sitting, I'll put the blame squarely on you. And so I think my thing right now is to ask, as an institution, as a guild, as a people who are standing, what do you want to stand for? What are the values that you're going to force your people to write for? I have had meetings with editors to say, this story is skewed. You know it's skewed. You know, we've got people being paid to tell stories. And then you put it out as a news story without your name attached to it. One of the reasons I love Clay's articles is he puts his name to it. So if you have an issue, it's, yes, you can talk to Nation, but you can also say, Clay wrote this,
Yes.
and Clay,
can hold him responsible.
I can hold Clay responsible. But when it's a standard story, who do you hold responsible? And I think that
Lorna, there's an editor.
I want to
An editor is fully responsible for all content. And in any case, the Media Act in Kenya is very clear. If it is my junior who has done a story which has issues, then I am responsible. You are not even allowed to sue the individual, the reporter. You're only allowed to sue the editor and the company. The Media Act is very clear on that. And which is why, as editors, we must up the game and ensure that all content that goes in for public consumption must be above board, fair, objective, balanced and has all facts and figures right in it.
Okay. Claire, I want to come to you because the question has been, was the media and everybody so keen at saving Kenya in this year's election? I even remember during the Supreme Court, the petition, presidential petition, and we were there as well live. And some media houses did not show pictures of the rioters who were outside the courtroom. And when we showed them, I mean, that is what was happening. You talk about it and there's somebody saying, why are you showing people? That is what they were doing. So the question of, how long will we be in this saving the country mode as journalists? How long will we be caught up in that, tied to that? And where do you draw the line that I love my country? I'm sure every journalist does, we hope.
I mean, I love my country so much that I don't want to lie to the people, to my compatriots.
Thank you.
You see, I love my country that much that actually I want to tell them that in Baragoi, this is what is happening. You guys are peaceful here in Kisumu or in Kakamega, but this is what is happening on the other side. Because you see, we did that. We were so cautious that time, and we received all the praises. Right now, we are being told, no, you guys, you cannot keep on showing. You're being irresponsible, and we are now confused. We don't know what to do. We do not know how to react, and that's why right now, unfortunately, when MPs say that they want to regulate the media, I think I say like, yeah, go ahead and do it because we have failed. Yeah, because
no, that's not acceptable.
Just a minute. Sometimes
they
I say,
start their own media houses and
sometimes I say,
themselves.
go ahead and do it because we have failed. Because one more thing is that we were with you guys on one side, and we should not have been with you. I mentioned this another time when I think we had a discussion, and I said that up to probably 3 weeks ago, the Kenyan media was actually going to the government like, please, the Kenyan media was in bed and asking the government, please come and sleep with me, please, come, that is what was happening. Right now, it's like you're being told like, no, we're done, we don't want you guys. So we are confused, we don't know. How are we reacting right now? We're being told that we're irresponsible. Why? Because all through, what did we do? We were cautious, we did not want to show those pictures and all that because we were saving Kenya. Okay, fine. So at Westgate, we figured like, oh, actually the enemy is not within, the enemy is from outside. So let's show people that. And then we're being told like, no, you should not have done that.
No, Claire, I think you're being selective with your case scenarios.
As you respond to that, how far do we go in terms of, as a journalist, and there are many who are watching right now, I'm covering the story and telling it as I know how best to tell it, being objective, telling all sides of the story, reporting also what is happening, giving that information. Vis-a-vis, this information could get somebody somewhere to shoot someone. So saving Kenya, being patriotic to that piece, and at the end of the day, informing people, what takes precedence?
Well, at the end of the day, first things first. We must tell the story factually, accurately, with facts as they stand. But we must also look at that we live in an environment. There's no need of saying that this Islamist kind of attack is aimed at Christians. Why would we inflame religious tensions in the country? We have a responsibility and a cardinal duty not to do that. And I agree with my colleagues who never did it, even during the coverage of Westgate. I agree with my colleagues who have been covering Mombasa fairly objective without trying to inflame those religious tensions and without inflaming even the tribal tensions when we are dealing with such serious stories of interclan wars and so on. And I think it is time to up the professionalism within the media. We must try and be like our medical counterparts. I would personally want to see one day when an editor or a journalist is said, you are denied a license, you cannot practice
I like
for 1
that.
year.
I like that.
Yeah, because unless we try and enforce those ethical and professional standards, then the sufferer will be the consumers of our product.
I just want to add on to that. I think what you're saying is right. Unless it's going to critically, and this is where we're talking about 21st century challenges, all right? Whereas before, as a war reporter, you knew who the enemy was, you knew the methodology they would use. We're going to bring tanks, we're going to show up at your borders, we're going to shoot you or kill you with bows and arrows. But now your enemy could be me.
Sure,
As you couldn't tell. You can't know. Maybe I'm an undercover operative and I've been doing this for 10 years.
Mr. Ohito talked about...
But on that issue, and just to finish that, but for me, it's saying that unless you are exposing a extremely high level security operation that will jeopardize not just your own security for you to get that story, but the lives of millions, I think at that point you can do it. So, which is why I was confused that the actual concern for Kimayo was post-Westgate showing footage and saying this is it, vis-a-vis the expendable story that may have, you're like, okay, this is a security operation.
Yeah.
How much leverage have you done? Are we being patriotic? You know, that one I was like, okay, you can ask the questions, but they've gotten the information. We are living in a society where people share this information. It shall come out in real time. It shall come out. And I think the responsibility from a media house is to not take sides, as he said, but to ask and present the questions and ask as a security concern, because they were called. They hadn't responded. So it's not that you're being bamboozled. You didn't walk into your office and, oh my goodness, there's a story, no one called me to ask me what my opinion was. According to that story, you were asked. So as long as it's fact checking, as long as you've accurate in it, as long as you've done your research, and you're like, I spoke to Sophia, she had no comment, so I raised the question. And I think agreeing the standards that you're setting, being clear about them is critical, because one of the things that has come up, and you were just saying until 3 weeks ago, is one of the questions that's being asked is, why you co-opted as a media with your cookies and breakfast at State House? Right. Because suddenly after that it became, we are all one big happy family.
I will always defend that.
Yeah.
In White House, there are resident journalists from all media houses. At 10 Downing Street, there are journalists residents.
Mr. Ohito will always defend that. Which is okay, there's no problem. But
and remember, there were very hard questions which were put to the president and his deputy during that breakfast.
I think these hard questions, they should be facing them every day. We should not be waiting.
I want, as you make your closing remarks, we're just about done. We have about 3 minutes to finish. As you make your closing remarks, very important that we find that place of journalism and patriotism, because I think that's the biggest thing at the end of the day. We are Kenyans, this is our country, we don't have any other place to go. If it doesn't work, it's not going to work for everybody, including the journalists. But at the end of the day, these are the people who Kenyans rely on. At the end of the day, they come sit, watch TV to find out what was happening throughout the day. As you make your closing
I was having a discussion yesterday with a media lawyer, or a lawyer, and he's worked in the newsroom also. And he told me something that actually disclosure saves a lot of lives, or it shows how patriotic you are, because there have been cases where after they do commission of inquiry, you find out that, oh, that plane that crashed was actually a junk helicopter, or it was not well serviced, or something like that. But whenever, probably, if at all we had tried to find out, like, okay, fine, if at all the police or the army or whoever owned that plane had told us, like, this was the procurement, this is how we bought this plane, and we got to know that actually the government or the Kenya Army or the Kenya Police have bought defective helicopters, then they could have actually, if at all we disclosed that, it could have been grounded, and very many lives of some ministers and all that could probably have been saved. So I think disclosure, let's get this fact beforehand. Let's not wait for something to happen. And then that's when we start digging. And then that's when we say, like, oh, we are very good investigative journalists. That's where sometimes we tend to cover these things, and you're told that is a national security issue. But a national security issue, it's better we know it beforehand. It's better we know, like, okay, this is what has been happening with the KDF. Probably KDF does not have resources. They don't have money to buy water when they go to war or when they go to combat. You see? So we know that. So we bring this to the fore, and somebody comes and says, no, we will not allow our army to go to fight in Somalia without water. So we don't wait for them to break into a private enterprise, and we pay taxes for them to take water. You get? So, I mean, I think being patriotic means, like, we need to bring these things out in the open, and it saves a lot of... If at all we had brought out that issue,
no matter how painful it is, bring it out.
Yeah, if at all we had brought out that issue of, seriously, our military, they don't have water, then, I mean, they could not have been so embarrassed this time, trying to defend themselves like Unajua. It was just water, They could not have been embarrassed this much. So
your final words for journalists and media practitioners.
Mr. Ohito belongs to something I call the Editor's Guild, not guild. I call it Editor's Guild.
Guild.
Yeah, because he has to defend himself all the time. Anyway, I think he mentioned something about professionalism, like LSK and all these other things. I don't know when we'll ever get to that level, because right now the problem we are having, even with MCK, right now the problem we're having is when MCK says that its job, one of its duties is accreditation. Accreditation should not just be a badge, because right now I can win a reality show, musical show. The following day, I'm employed to become a radio presenter. On the third day, I walk to MCK and I'm given a badge, accreditation as a Kenyan journalist. Yeah, so accreditation for MCK should not just be a badge. It should be much more than that. That is what is happening. So I don't know at what point we'll ever get to that level where actually they vet and know, like, Mr. Ohito is a journalist. Okay, fine, you are a radio presenter. You are a news reader. You see, we've not gotten to that level yet. And that's what we're having, the problem we're having now with even media. I mean, all these things that the parliament is trying to do is that when we came up within the media bill of 2007, there's so many loopholes in there that actually that is what the politicians are exploiting. I'll just give you one example. The second schedule of the Media Act. We have included our, conduct, ethics and conduct, or all that.
Code of conduct, yeah.
So, code of conduct. We have included it there. So actually it is open to be, anybody can poke holes into it. It's like, right now, it's very difficult for somebody to walk into your newsroom and start telling you, change your style book, because it is yours. Okay. But what is happening is that our code of conduct is within the Media Act. Anybody out there can change it. The politicians can poke holes into it and say, no, we don't, your headline, the font size must be this, because you see, they can do anything to it. And that's that's one mistake that we're not accepting that we made when we're coming up with the drafting of the media bill, or of the Media Act.
All right.
Yeah.
Finally, your closing thoughts on this discussion as we wind up, Mr. Ohito.
Is that we must return to the national values. If you want journalists to be patriotic, it must start with the politicians, it must start with the judiciary, it must start with every other professional. You cannot expect us to stand different from the rest of the society. Two, we have done a fairly good job and we are open to criticism. But to try and then bring in pieces of legislation that wants or attempts to take away our freedom, that attempts to close the media space, that attempts to now deny Kenyans access to information as enshrined in the Constitution, I think is a very big blow, and that we must stand as editors, as journalists, to defend our space in this environment, to remain competitive and to do our cardinal duty of informing, educating, and entertaining Kenyans professionally.
Finally, Lorna.
The only person I'd like to quote is Mutahingunyi, but I don't think it's actually valid for a breakfast show. I don't agree that the media needs to follow the standards of the judiciary or of the politicians. I think the media's role should be to set a standard, should be the ones who are leading the way. When you call yourself the informative and authoritative channel, and then you're looking at politicians as your lead, there's a problem. So my thing is this: you are in the rare and very unique position to influence a country in transition, in an era where you've got technology giving a play, where you've got change. There's a lot of change happening where you are actually fighting redundancy, because at some point I should not turn into a media. Why should I bother when I can go online, internet, or why should I even buy a paper if half my story is online? So you're actually battling to fight for your space. And if you're fighting the battle of your life, then you need to up your game 100%. So I really think professionalism needs to be done. I think pretty faces for ratings should not be the way that we are looking at judging ourselves. I agree with him. If you're going to call yourself a journalist, please be able to construct a sentence in proper English before someone allows you on air at any level, because then that is what you're saying. But if you're just going to allow the next pretty face who can't construct a sentence, and people then And then you cannot question Olelenko when he says the number of people is inconsequential. You have no right. So if you want to continue having a right to speak, to criticize, to report objectively, then you have to set a standard that says, this is who I am, this is what we stand for. Moha and John Alanamu are the exception of the rule, but they are the bar. So everyone else needs to be heading there if you're talking about investigative journalism. We've got great writers. I think Clay is one of the best writers we have, but that is the bar, because he is going to stand by what he says. So at that level, we've got those people. We need to go back to what you're saying. If you've been if you are an editor in the newsroom 20 years and you send a rookie to the streets, you need to be fired. There is nothing else. Then why are you there?
Sure.
If you're sending, if I open an article that has 10 spelling mistakes, one article, and you're the editor on duty, you need to be fired. If you're not doing that, then you cannot question the government on faulty helicopters. You cannot question them. You cannot put the judiciary and put spreads on them. No, you have no right. You all need to be sleeping together then. So my thing is, you are still a trusted institution, but maintain it. Otherwise, the next time there's a big breaking story, it will be Robert Alai again on the face of international press as the face of people who are reporting credibly and not your top journalists who win awards.
Right. Lorna Irungu, communication consultant, thank you so much for being quite blunt. That is what we need, that kind of a conversation. Ohito, interesting discussion, no?
Yeah, we must play our watchdog role.
We must play our role. David Ohito, Deputy Chair, Editors Guild, and of course, Claire Muganda. And of course, Claire Muganda, columnist, writer, you prefer to be called. Thank you all for coming this morning, being part of our discussion on this show. I can see a lot of conversations already going on social media as far as this is concerned, and people are having their own comments and thoughts on this. It's a discussion that must continue. I wish we had more time, but at least we've laid that stage for it to go out there and people to talk about it. But at the end of the day, of course, it boils down to us guys. So we shall go have a meeting. In the
it does, but actually right now, I think right now as it is, the media now is actually at a crossroads. We have that thing in Parliament. Yeah. We don't know what's going on according to that is section Article 34 subsection 5 of the Constitution that says the Parliament shall pass a law that will regulate the media, legislate. Yeah. So this is what is now. We don't know. There's the CCK one, and then there's the media council one. Yeah. What we don't know is, okay, when we get, let's say the media council one goes through, is the media council going to become a constitutional body, or what is it? You see, the discussion is still. I think we need to bring in more journalists, more professional journalists into this MCK, CCK discussion, whatever is going on in Parliament and all that. Otherwise, we'll just end up having that thing already been passed, you know. And then we will not get any space, the space that we are actually fighting for. It will not be there. I think we should not lose it, and I think we should be so patriotic that we should not sweep things under the carpet.
We should not sweep things under the carpet. On that note is where we'll wind up this discussion. Thank you all that have tweeted us this morning. Keep your comments coming. It's all about, is there a balance that can be found? We're talking about journalism and also patriotism going forward. The next 50 years, how will this field and industry look like? Well, we'll have to watch and listen and read as well to see how that plays out.